The Thalran Empire was one of the oldest and strongest civilizations in the galaxy. Their fleet stretched across hundreds of worlds. Their soldiers marched in perfect unity, and their queen was respected even by enemies. But the story of the queen was no longer one of glory. It was a story of sorrow. Years ago, during a border war with raiders, the queen's personal vessel had been attacked. She was not on the ship, but her two young daughters, twin princesses, were. The attackers destroyed the escorts and vanished into the void with the royal heirs. For weeks, then months, then years, the Empire searched every star. Fleets scoured asteroid belts, intelligence agents broke apart smuggler rings, and fortune hunters were paid enormous bounties. But no answers came. The twins had vanished. Some whispered they were killed the same night. Others believed they were sold into the dark slave markets beyond mapped space. The truth remained hidden, and the queen was left with nothing but silence. Time passed, but her grief did not fade. The palace that once echoed with her laughter grew silent. She still ruled her people with strength, but her eyes carried the weight of loss. Her voice, once warm, became cold. Where once she had dreamed of peace, she now thought only of duty. The queen's sorrow became the Empire's sorrow. Across the galaxy, the tragedy of the missing princesses became legend. Stories were told in trade stations and on the decks of passing freighters. Children in far-off colonies heard the tale and felt pity, even if they had never seen a Thalran face. Among those who heard the stories were the humans. Humanity was still new to the interstellar stage. They had only joined the wider galactic community 2 generations ago, and most elder species thought of them as reckless, short-lived, and too bold for their own good. Humans explored dangerous systems where others refused to go. They built ships that rattled and groaned, but somehow survived battles they had no right to win. Their inventiveness made them both amusing and irritating to the great powers. Ethan Ward was one of those humans. He was not a soldier, nor a nobleman, nor even a respected captain. He was a salvager. His ship, the Rusthawk, was old and patched together with parts from a dozen different wrecks. He made his living by flying into forgotten battlefields, derelict stations, or abandoned mining colonies and collecting whatever he could sell. Most called him a scavenger, but Ethan liked to think of himself as a treasure hunter. It was on one of these hunts that his story began. The Rusthawk drifted near a dead system on the edge of mapped space. The system's star had collapsed long ago, leaving only frozen planets and jagged asteroid fields. To most, it was a wasteland. To Ethan, it was a promise of scrap metal and salvage. He found it on the second day. The scanners caught something strange, a ship hidden inside the shadow of an asteroid. It was old, scarred by weapons fire, and without any signal. Ethan's heart beat faster. Abandoned ships could mean valuable tech, but they could also mean traps. Many pirates left fake derelicts floating to lure in scavengers. Still, he had come this far. He could not turn away from the chance of something rare. The Rusthawk latched onto the broken vessel with magnetic clamps. Ethan put on his suit and crossed the gap. The airlock hissed as he forced it open, and he stepped into silence. The ship's corridors were dark and frozen. His helmet light cut across walls marked with burn scars. He moved carefully, pistol ready. Dust floated in the air like frozen mist. He passed wrecked rooms, broken terminals, and empty crates. Whoever had once crewed this vessel was long gone. Then, at the end of a corridor, he found a sealed chamber. The door was heavy, reinforced, and locked with alien codes. Ethan frowned. Why would a dead ship keep one room powered and sealed after all this time? Curiosity drove him. He pulled out his tools, patched into the panel, and forced the system to open. With a slow groan, the door slid aside. Inside were 2 stasis pods. His light swept over them, and his breath caught. Each pod held a small figure, 2 children, with delicate, ridged brows and faintly glowing markings on their skin. Their faces were peaceful, their eyes closed. They looked as if they were merely sleeping. Ethan stepped closer, his heart pounding. Stasis pods meant they were alive. Somehow, whoever had placed them here had locked them away for years, maybe longer. His first thought was money. Living aliens in stasis pods, especially children, could be worth fortunes on the black markets. His second thought was danger. If pirates, smugglers, or raiders had kept these children, then taking them might bring the same monsters down on his head. But then he looked again at their faces. They were not just any children. Their clothes, though worn and old, carried a crest he recognized from a dozen news broadcasts and old stories. The royal crest of the Thalran Empire. He froze. Could it be? The twins? The missing princesses, his mind raced. For years, the entire galaxy had searched for them. If these really were the lost daughters of the Queen, he was standing in front of a secret worth more than all the fleets in the galaxy. And yet, instead of excitement, he felt something else. A weight of responsibility. If he left them, someone else might find them. Pirates could take them. Slavers could sell them. Assassins could silence them. They would be lost again, and this time forever. Ethan rubbed his faceplate, thinking. He had no plan, no allies, no powerful ship. Just the Rust Hawk and his stubborn will. But in his chest, a voice whispered, "If not you, then who?" He sighed. "Looks like you're stuck with me, kids." He began working quickly. He rerouted power, unlocked the pods from their cradle, and brought them aboard his ship. It was not easy. The pods were heavy and awkward, but he managed, cursing under his breath the entire way. When the pods were secure inside the Rust Hawk, Ethan finally allowed himself to rest. He sat across from them, studying their faces. They looked so peaceful. He wondered if they had any idea how much blood had been spilled for them, how much grief their absence had caused. He whispered, "Guess the universe isn't done with you yet." As his ship undocked and drifted away from the derelict, Ethan did not know how many eyes would soon turn toward him. He did not know that he had just picked up the most dangerous cargo in the galaxy. All he knew was that 2 children were alive, and that was reason enough to fight. The Rust Hawk drifted out of the dead system, her patched engines groaning with every push. Inside, Ethan Ward sat in the cockpit staring at the 2 stasis pods strapped down in the cargo bay. His hands gripped the controls tighter than usual. He had pulled dangerous salvage before, but never like this. 2 children, 2 princesses, 2 lives that could shake empires. He rubbed his forehead. What the hell have I done? The smart move was obvious. Report the find to the nearest patrol, hand the pods over, and take a reward. It would clear his name if trouble followed. But he did not trust it. Too many factions wanted the heirs gone. Too many officials cared more about power than honor. If he turned them in, he might never know if they truly reached the Queen alive. He had made his choice the moment he lifted the pods onto his ship. Now he was committed. First signs of trouble. It didn't take long for trouble to find him. 2 days out, as he crossed a trade lane, a signal pinged his ship. The voice on the comm was smooth and polite. "Unidentified human vessel, this is Captain Ron of the mercenary cruiser Ironfang. We have reason to believe you are carrying important cargo. Power down your ship and we'll make this easy." Ethan swore under his breath. He checked his scanners. A heavy ship sat behind him, weapons hot. He couldn't outrun it, not in a straight line. He tapped the comm. "Sorry, friend. You've got the wrong guy. Just a pile of scrap and a hungry stomach here." The reply came with a laugh. "Then you won't mind if we board and take a look." Ethan killed the channel. His hands flew over the controls. He had no fleet, no escorts, no big guns. But he had something else, human stubbornness and a ship held together with tricks. The Merc cruiser closed in, its shields glowing. Ethan swung the Rust Hawk hard to the left, diving into a field of ice asteroids. His ship rattled as chunks of frozen rock scraped against the hull. "Come on, girl," he muttered. "Hold together." The Merc ship followed, blasting asteroids aside with its cannons. Ethan grinned tightly. That was their mistake. The Rust Hawk was small and nimble, a rat weaving through cracks where a wolf could not follow. He fired off a cluster of decoy flares. They burst into glowing trails, confusing the enemy's targeting systems. Then he spun around a massive rock and cut his engines. For a moment, his ship was nothing but cold metal drifting in silence. The Mercs roared past, chasing the false signals. When Ethan reignited his engines, he slipped out the opposite side of the field, heart pounding. The Mercs were fooled, for now. The secret revealed, after the escape, Ethan checked the pods again. The power readings were steady, but one of the pods flickered strangely. He frowned and tapped the display. The glass misted, then cleared, and for the first time, one of the girls stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. They glowed faintly, the way all Thalaran eyes did. She looked confused, then frightened. She tried to speak, her voice weak from long stasis. Where am I?" Ethan knelt beside the pod. "Safe, you're safe now. I pulled you out of a wreck." The girl blinked at him. Her lips formed a word, a name heavy with meaning, the crest of her royal house. Ethan froze. He already suspected who they were, but hearing her say it made his heart thump harder. You "You're the princess," he whispered, her eyes filled with tears. "I want my mother." Ethan clenched his jaw. That was easier said than done, but he nodded. "I'll take you home. Both of you. I swear it." The girl relaxed, her eyes closing again as the pod sealed her back into rest. Ethan sat back heavily. There was no doubt now. He wasn't just hauling mystery kids, he was carrying the lost heirs of the Thalran throne. And if mercenaries were already sniffing, others would follow. Hunted across the stars, his guess proved true. Over the next week, more ships came. Pirates, bounty hunters, even sleek vessels with no markings. Every one of them had the same demand: surrender the pods. Ethan survived by being unpredictable. Where alien captains relied on straight lines and formation tactics, Ethan cut power to fake being dead, drifted into planetary rings, or slingshot around moons using gravity. He overloaded his shields to blind enemy sensors, jury-rigged his engine to fire a burst of plasma as a weapon, and once even dumped half his scrap cargo to create a cloud of metal shards that tore apart pursuing fighters. Each escape left his ship scarred and his nerves on fire, but somehow he always pulled through. The galaxy had underestimated humans again. Memories in the dark between battles. The ship grew quiet. Ethan spent hours in the cockpit keeping watch while the pods hummed softly behind him. Sometimes he talked to them, even if they couldn't hear. "Your mother never gave up on you, you know," he said one night staring at the stars. "Whole damn galaxy thought you were gone, but she kept looking. Don't know if she'll thank me or shoot me when I show up with you. But I'll take that risk." The silence never answered. But he felt less alone. Once he dreamed of turning back, of finding a safe world to hide them on. But when he closed his eyes, he saw the girl's tearful whisper, "I want my mother." That was enough to push him forward. The web of enemies unseen by him, word spread fast. In the great courts of the galaxy, whispers passed from noble to noble. The human had found the heirs. Some rejoiced, others panicked. For the Thalran Empire, the return of the princesses could mean stability, or chaos. Factions that had grown strong in their absence would lose power. Rivals who dreamed of seizing the throne would see their plans shattered, and so unseen assassins were sent. Not to capture, to kill. The narrow escape, the first assassins struck at a fueling station. Ethan had docked to refill his tanks, his ship battered and weary. He kept the pod sealed inside, guarded by every lock he could set. But as he stepped out to pay the station clerk, 3 cloaked figures moved through the shadows. Their weapons were silent, sleek, designed to kill without notice. Ethan spotted them at the last second, human instinct catching what scanners missed. He grabbed a wrench from the counter and hurled it. The clang drew their eyes for a split second, and in that second, Ethan fired his sidearm. The firefight was short and brutal. Ethan ducked behind crates, returning fire with quick bursts. He was no trained soldier, but he fought like a man who refused to fall. When the smoke cleared, the assassins lay silent. Ethan was bleeding from a cut on his arm, but he was alive. The station master stared at him in shock. "Who are you? Why are killers after you?" Ethan simply tightened the bandage on his arm and replied, "Just a guy keeping a promise." He left before more could come. The road ahead back aboard the Rusthawk, Ethan checked the pods once more. The girls were safe, still sleeping in their long silence. He placed a hand on the glass. "Almost there," he whispered. "Almost home." But even as he said it, he knew the hardest part was still ahead. The Empire was vast, and its borders were watched by fleets that trusted no outsiders. And even if he reached the Queen, how could he prove the truth? One thing was certain. The journey was no longer about salvage, profit, or even survival. It was about 2 children who deserved to see their mother again. Ethan leaned back in the captain's chair, staring into the endless stars. His ship was small, his enemies were many, and the odds were against him, but he was human. And humans had never cared much about odds. With that thought, he set course for the heart of the Thalran Empire. The Rusthawk limped through space, her hull scarred and engines rattling from too many near escapes. Ethan Ward sat in the cockpit, his eyes bloodshot, hands steady despite his exhaustion. He had fought mercenaries, pirates, and even assassins, but somehow he had survived. Still, he knew his luck would not last forever. Behind him, the 2 stasis pods glowed softly. The lost princesses of the Thalran Empire lay safe inside, unaware of the danger gathering around them. Ethan often looked back at them, and every time he did, the same thought pressed heavy on his mind. They deserve better than me. But I'm all they have. The growing shadow word of his cargo had spread faster than he imagined. Stations whispered his name. Smugglers traded rumors, and bounty hunters passed coordinates. Some painted him as a fool, others as a hero, but all agreed on one thing. The human carried the most valuable treasure in the galaxy. The Queen's rivals grew nervous. If the princesses returned, their chances of seizing power would vanish. Assassins were already failing. Now fleets began to move in secret. The pirates, meanwhile, smelled profit. Some wanted to sell the girls to the highest bidder. Others wanted to ransom them to the Queen herself. Ethan had become a target for every greedy eye between the stars, a bond in silence. The journey was long and sometimes lonely. Ethan often talked to the pods as if the girls could hear him. He told them stories about Earth, about rain on rooftops, about dogs chasing children in fields, about old songs sung by campfires. One night, while adjusting the ship's failing life support, he heard a faint voice. "Captain." He froze. It came from one of the pods. The elder twin, he thought she might be older by minutes, though he couldn't tell, had stirred again. Her eyes opened, weak but bright. "You're awake," Ethan whispered. He knelt by the pod. She looked at him, confused. "Who are you?" "Ethan, just a human salvager. I found you in a wreck. Been keeping you safe since then." Her eyes searched his face. "Are we going home?" "Yes," he said firmly. "I'm taking you to your mother." Tears welled in her eyes. "Mother." She whispered the word like a prayer. Then she reached a trembling hand to the glass. Ethan pressed his palm against it. "You'll see her again. I promise." Her lips curved into the faintest smile before the stasis cycle pulled her back into sleep. Ethan sat there for a long time after, feeling the weight of her trust. It was no longer just a mission. It was family. The ambush a week later, his scanner screamed. 3 ships appeared out of hyperspace ahead of him. Sleek, sharp-edged vessels with no markings. Too well armed to be pirates, too secretive to be official, Ethan cursed. Whoever they were, they wanted him dead. The first ship fired, and the Rusthawk shook as shields flared. Ethan yanked the controls, spinning the ship into a dive. Plasma bolts streaked past his hull. "All right, girl," he muttered to his ship. "One more dance." He darted toward a gas giant, diving into its swirling clouds. Lightning flashed outside as the pressure buffeted his ship. The pursuers followed, confident in their superior engines. Ethan cut his power suddenly, letting the Rusthawk tumble. The enemy ships overshot, circling back. In that moment, Ethan rerouted his reactor, dumping unstable fuel into his thrusters. He reignited them in a burst. The Rusthawk shot forward like a spear, colliding head-on with one of the attackers. The explosion ripped the skies, and the debris spiraled into the storm. The other 2 ships veered away, cautious now. Ethan smirked grimly. "Didn't see that one coming, did you?" But the fight wasn't over. The second ship loomed behind him, weapons charging. Ethan's shields were gone, his engines overheating. Then a sudden flare lit up the sky. A freighter convoy had entered the system, their escorts firing warning shots. The attackers broke off, not willing to be seen. They vanished into hyperspace, leaving Ethan barely alive. He let out a shaky breath. "Thanks, strangers." The convoy's warning, the convoy hailed him, their captain appearing on his cracked screen. A tall insectoid alien with wide black eyes studied him. "You are the human, Ethan Ward," the alien said slowly. "The one carrying them." Ethan stiffened. "And if I am?" The alien leaned closer. "Word travels. Everyone knows. You cannot keep running forever. If you try to cross into the Empire, you will be met by fleets. The Queen's enemies will strike before you ever reach her." "I don't care," Ethan said. "I promise to take them home." The alien's mandibles clicked, a sound like reluctant respect. "Then you are either the bravest man I've met, or the most foolish. Perhaps both." The convoy offered him supplies but warned they could not protect him. Too many eyes watched already. Ethan accepted the supplies, thanked them, and flew on. His path was clear. Forward, no matter the danger. The betrayal. Not all meetings were so kind. At a trade outpost near the Empire's border, Ethan docked for repairs. His ship's reactor was failing, and without fixing it, he would never survive the final jump. He paid a mechanic, a gruff reptilian worker named Drass, to patch the core. Drass nodded, taking the credits eagerly, but that night alarms screamed. Ethan rushed to the cargo hold, weapon ready. Drass was there, with 3 armed men. They were trying to pry open the stasis pods. Rage filled Ethan's chest. "Get away from them," Drass sneered. "Do you know what these are worth? I could buy a planet. You're a fool, human, thinking you can protect them." Ethan fired first. The fight was brutal, cramped between crates. His arm was burned by a plasma shot, but he fought like a cornered wolf. One by one, the attackers fell. Drass tried to flee, but Ethan tackled him, slamming him into the floor. Breathing hard, Ethan whispered through clenched teeth, "They're not for sale." He left Drass alive but beaten, warning him never to come near again. That night, Ethan sat by the pods, his blood staining the floor. He spoke softly. "Don't worry. I won't let anyone take you. Not while I'm breathing." Doubts and resolve alone again in the cockpit, Ethan stared at the stars. His body ached. His ship barely held together, and enemies were closing in from every side. "Why me?" he thought. "Why not some hero, some soldier, someone with power? I'm just a scavenger with a rust bucket ship." But then he remembered the girl's faint smile, the way she whispered for her mother. That was enough. He straightened in his chair, determination burning in his eyes, because no one else would try. That's why. The Empire awaits. The border of the Thalran Empire loomed ahead. Beyond it lay fleets, patrols, and the Queen herself. Ethan knew stepping across would be like walking into the jaws of a beast, but he also knew this. He had come too far to turn back. With a deep breath, he set his course. The Rusthawk, battered but unbroken, pushed toward the stars that marked the Empire's space. Behind him, the pods glowed softly, as if sensing the nearness of home. Enemies waited. Danger grew. But Ethan Ward, human salvager, carried on, because when he looked at those children, he saw something no empire could understand, a promise that mattered more than his life. The border of the Thalran Empire was not a line drawn on a map. It was a wall of steel. As the Rusthawk approached, Ethan Ward's scanners filled with signals. Dozens of patrol ships, cruisers, and carriers patrolled the region. Their formations were sharp, their discipline clear. The Thalran did not take chances. No one slipped past their borders without permission. Ethan's hands tightened on the controls. His ship rattled with every shiver of the engine. The hull groaned, patched with scars from battles he had barely survived. Against a single Imperial warship, the Rusthawk was nothing. Against a fleet, it was already a corpse drifting in space. But he kept flying forward. The interception. The comm crackled. A deep, commanding voice filled the cockpit. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted Thalran space. Power down immediately. Any attempt to advance will result in destruction." Ethan swallowed. He tapped the comm. "This is Captain Ethan Ward, human salvager. I have cargo, 2 passengers that must be delivered directly to the Queen. They are her daughters." A pause followed, then harsh laughter. "Human lies. The princesses are dead. Your claim is a crime against the Empire. Prepare to be boarded." Ethan's stomach sank. He had expected disbelief, but the cold certainty in their voices cut deep. "They're alive," he shouted. "I found them. I've kept them safe. Let me prove it." Alarms blared. His scanner showed 3 warships closing fast. Ethan cursed. He couldn't fight them. He couldn't outrun them. All he could do was protect the pods. He stood, ran to the cargo bay, and placed a hand on each stasis chamber. "No matter what happens, I'll keep my word." The ship shuddered as tractor beams locked onto it. The Rusthawk was dragged like a fly into the maw of a spider. The palace of suspicion. They brought him in chains. Ethan's boots clanged against the polished floors of the Imperial Palace. Soldiers marched beside him, tall and armored in silver, their weapons ready. Behind them, attendants pushed the stasis pods sealed under heavy guard. The palace was a marvel of crystal towers and flowing banners, but Ethan had no time to admire it. Every eye on him was filled with disdain. To them, he was nothing more than a human scavenger who dared claim the impossible. They brought him before the High Council first, not the Queen. 12 nobles sat in a circle, their robes gleaming with jewels. Their faces were cold, their eyes sharp. The eldest noble sneered. "You insult us, human. To parade broken relics and claim they are the royal heirs." "They're not relics," Ethan snapped, yanking against his chains. "They're alive. I risked everything to bring them here." The chamber erupted in angry murmurs. How dare a human raise his voice? Guard stepped forward, weapons humming. Ethan didn't care. "Check their blood! Their DNA, anything. You'll see I'm telling the truth." One noble leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Even if this is true, why would a human risk his life for them? What did you expect? A throne? Wealth?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "I don't want anything. I promised a scared little girl she'd see her mother again. That's all." The nobles fell silent for a moment, not out of respect but out of confusion. They couldn't understand a man who would risk everything for no reward. Then the eldest noble said coldly, "Lock him away. Destroy the pods if they are tricks." Ethan's blood ran cold. "No," he shouted, straining against his chains. "You'll regret it." The guards moved to drag him away, and that was when the assassins struck. The attack inside the palace. The chamber doors exploded inward. Black-clad figures stormed in, weapons flashing. The nobles screamed, scattering as guards clashed with the intruders. Ethan twisted, yanking against his restraints. A guard fell beside him, cut down by a blade. In desperation, Ethan grabbed the fallen weapon with his bound hands and swung wildly. The chain on his wrist snapped under the blow. He was free. "Stay away from them," he roared, charging toward the pods. The assassins were already there, trying to breach the seals. Ethan tackled one, slamming him into the floor. Another swung a blade, slicing Ethan's arm, but Ethan fought through the pain, driving his stolen weapon into the attacker's chest. Blaster fire scorched the air. Guards and assassins fell alike. Smoke filled the chamber. In the chaos, Ethan stood over the pods, shielding them with his body. "You'll have to kill me first," he shouted. The assassins surged forward. Ethan fought like a man possessed, blocking, striking, bleeding. His vision blurred, his muscles screamed, but he refused to fall, and then, "Mother!" The cry pierced the chaos. The daughters' voices. The stasis pods had cracked open in the struggle. The twins, fragile but alive, stepped out. Their eyes glowed with the mark of royal blood. Their voices carried across the chamber like bells. "Mother!" they cried together. The queen had entered. She stood at the top of the chamber stairs, her regal form framed by banners, her eyes wide with shock. For years she had hidden her grief, buried it under duty. Now that mask shattered. "My daughters," she whispered, tears running down her cheeks. The assassins froze, their courage faltering under her gaze. The guards rallying struck them down in moments. Silence fell, broken only by the queen's trembling steps as she rushed to her children. The princesses ran to her, collapsing into her arms. The queen held them, weeping openly for the first time in years. The court stared in disbelief. The impossible had happened. The heirs were alive, and it was a human who had brought them home. The collapse, Ethan swayed on his feet. His wounds burned, his blood dripped onto the floor. He saw the queen embracing her daughters, saw their tears, their joy. His promise was kept. A faint smile touched his lips. Then his knees buckled and he fell. The last thing he heard before darkness claimed him was the princesses shouting, "Don't let him die." The whisper of Change's healers rushed to save him. The nobles argued in whispers. Some wanted him rewarded. Others wanted him silenced. The idea that a human, primitive, reckless, unworthy, had succeeded where the empire failed was too much for them to accept. But in the hearts of the people, a new story had already begun. Word spread like fire. The lost princesses had returned, carried home not by fleets or armies, but by one stubborn human who refused to give up. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. Ethan Ward's head throbbed. His body ached from the battles, the burns, the cuts. He was alive, but barely. Around him, palace healers worked quickly, their hands glowing with energy as they stitched wounds and stabilized his breathing. Through the haze of pain, Ethan could hear the queen's voice. Soft, trembling, filled with disbelief and joy. "My daughters," she whispered again, holding the twins close. They clung to her, shaking with sobs, their small bodies trembling from years of fear and uncertainty. Ethan blinked, weakly lifting his head to see them. For years he had carried them across space, fought countless enemies, and faced death more times than he could count. And now he saw the reward, the two princesses, alive and in their mother's arms. He wanted to smile, but his lips barely moved. A palace in shock, the court was silent, stunned. Nobles whispered among themselves, unsure how to react. Some glared at Ethan, unwilling to admit that a human had succeeded where the Empire's fleets and spies had failed. Others stared in awe. One elder noble spoke finally, his voice trembling with rage and disbelief. This human carried the heirs across danger we could not even face? This is impossible. The Queen turned sharply, her eyes flashing with authority. It is not impossible. He did it. He risked everything to bring my daughters home, and for that he must be honored, not questioned. Murmurs ran through the chamber. The Queen's words carried weight. Her grief had made her cautious before, but her joy now transformed it into power. She would not allow anyone to take this moment from her. The princesses speak. The twins, now fully aware of the moment, ran to Ethan's side. One touched his cheek gently, her fingers small and warm. "You saved us," she whispered. The other nodded, her eyes shining. "We owe you everything." Ethan tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He had never wanted glory. He had never sought reward. He had only wanted to keep a promise. The Queen knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, Ward," she said softly but firmly, "you are more than a human. You are a guardian, a protector, and a friend. You brought hope to a broken empire. For that you will be remembered for all time." For the first time, Ethan felt a weight lift from his chest. The empire had not only accepted him, they had acknowledged him. The nobles react, not all were pleased. Some of the high nobles, those who had hoped to gain power while the princesses were missing, muttered angrily. "You dare honor a human?" one hissed. "He is an outsider. He has no claim here." The Queen's gaze swept over them, sharp and unyielding. "I do not ask for your approval. The heirs are safe because of him. That is all that matters." Silence followed. Even the murmurs of dissent faded under the weight of her authority. For the first time, the palace understood that humans, once seen as reckless, weak, and short-lived, were capable of courage and loyalty that surpassed even the most trained soldiers of the Empire. A hero emerges. Ethan was helped to his feet and led to a private chamber. There the twins sat beside him, talking quietly, their voices soft but filled with wonder. "You were never afraid?" one asked. Ethan chuckled weakly. "Afraid? Sure, but fear never stopped anyone who cared enough to try. I couldn't let anyone take you, not after all we went through." The princesses looked at him in admiration, seeing something in him that their people would never fully understand. A human heart that refused to quit, even when all odds were against him. The Queen's gratitude. Later that evening, the Queen entered Ethan's chamber. She brought food and a cup of warm liquid to help his strength return. "You have done what no one else could," she said. Her eyes were soft, yet filled with pride. "You carried my daughters through fire, through death, through space itself. You are extraordinary." Ethan smiled faintly. "I only did what I had to. I promised them they'd see you again." The Queen knelt beside him, taking his hand. "And you kept that promise. The galaxy will remember this day, and I will ensure your name is honored wherever humans and Thalrin are known." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. For a human scavenger, the galaxy was vast, cruel, and indifferent. But here he felt a belonging, a recognition and a respect that mattered more than gold or fame. A new understanding. In the days that followed, the palace adjusted to the presence of a human hero. The twins stayed close to him, often holding his hands or sitting beside him as he recovered. He taught them small lessons about survival, clever tricks he had used to escape, and the ways of the stars that even the Empire had never explored. The court, once skeptical, began to see the truth in the Queen's words. Humans were not weak. They were clever, resourceful, and loyal. The very traits that the galaxy had underestimated in them had saved the heirs of the Empire. The Queen herself made it clear. Ethan would have his choice. He could leave, return to his wandering life, or remain in the palace honored as the protector of the royal family. Ethan thought for a moment. The life of freedom he had known would be gone. But the bonds he had formed, the trust he had earned, and the family he had found were worth far more than any scrap of freedom. Humans and the Empire. When word spread beyond the palace walls, the galaxy reacted in awe. Humans, once thought to be reckless and fleeting, had proven they could achieve what even the greatest empires could not. Stories of Ethan Ward's courage became legend. Traders spoke of him, pirates whispered his name, and the Thalran fleet honored his actions with medals and recognition. The human who had been laughed at, dismissed, and underestimated had changed the galaxy's view. They would no longer see humans as fragile or short-lived. They would see humans as heroes, protectors, and champions of hope. The Queen's final. Choice Ethan, finally standing strong and healed, knelt before the Queen and the twins. "You saved my life," the Queen said, her voice firm, "and the lives of my daughters. You could have left, yet you risked everything. I will grant you a place here, if you wish it. A protector of the heirs, a guest of the throne, an honored human in the Empire." Ethan looked at the princesses. Their eyes shone with trust and love. He looked at the Queen, whose grief had turned to joy and respect. A slow smile spread across his face. I think I'll stay." The Queen nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Then you shall have it, and the Empire shall know that humans are not merely visitors among the stars. They are allies, friends, and sometimes the bravest hearts of all." The future begins. The twins hugged him tightly, their laughter filling the chamber. For the first time in years, the palace felt alive with joy. The Queen, once consumed by grief, smiled freely. The nobles, though reluctant, began to understand the lesson. Courage, loyalty, and heart were not bound by species. Ethan looked out of the window at the stars beyond the palace. He thought of the Rusthawk, battered but still whole in his mind. He thought of all the dangers he had faced, all the enemies he had evaded, all the promises he had kept. The galaxy had tested him, and humans in general. They had expected humans to fail. They had expected humans to run, to fall, to give up. Instead, a human had brought home the lost daughters of the Queen, and the galaxy would never forget it. Legacy Ethan Ward's name became legend. Children told stories of the human who defied. Fleets defeated assassins and crossed the stars to bring hope back to a grieving queen. The twins grew up under his guidance, strong, wise, and fearless, always remembering the human who had saved them. In time, the Thalran Empire and humanity formed bonds that no one had anticipated. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were heroes. They were friends, they were family,